Well, I thought we'd do a little bit of a compression test, given that the other day I was driving and I got a bit of a misfire, and it's that one that really sounds like a machine gun. It kind of goes, you know. So I thought what I'd do is I'd do a bit of a compression test and inspect the plugs and see what the plugs come out like, and try and find the source of it. I'm suspecting there will be one cylinder that will be worse than the rest of them. So the first thing I had to do was obviously take off the HT leads, and luckily on this particular engine I don't have to worry about trying to remember which lead goes to which plug, because they're all in length order, so that's good, and they're numbered anyway. But with those leads I've got, they're all numbered anyway. But yeah, just take them all out and put them to one side. Then when I started to take out the cylinder number 1 plug, I noticed it was quite stiff and it was squeaking quite a lot, so I knew the threads weren't going to be ideal. And then look what happened when I went to look at that. God, blimey, look at all that. What's all that doing in there? I reckon we got something going on here, don't you? Yes, and just look at the next one. I reckon there's definitely something funny going on in there. This one wasn't too bad. It was stuck in a little bit though. I was getting a little bit worried about them as I was moving along there, because they were getting more and more stuck, and I was thinking, blimey, I hope none of them break off. But this is the one that I was thinking would be the worst, and it's the only one that doesn't have any rubbish around it. It's coated in a wet, gooey substance, which I suspect is coolant. Right, so on to number 4 then. This one was the worst. I was really worried that was going to snap off, as you can see. But it was alright in the end. I've managed to free the thread up now. Now I was worried about this one. I thought this was the one that was misfiring on the startup, but it's the same as the others, full of rubbish around it. Slightly black and a little bit brown. Not the worst, but it's the same. Here's a closer look at the plugs from number 1. Zoom out a little bit. Got 1, 2, 3 and 4. Number 1, pretty consistent with the other 3. We've got quite a lot of grit around the threads. I don't know where all that grit's coming from and what it's doing in the threads. The top of the plug itself is quite black. We know it's going to be running rich anyway. It's got a brown tip on top of the electrode. So, it's interesting. At least we haven't got... What I tend to get is... I tend to get all the insulator here. It cracks and explodes, and it all comes off, and then I end up with no insulator. That's why I get the misfire usually. So if we have a look at number 2's plug, that's also got quite a lot of grit around the threads, and it's also very black around the top here, with a brown tip and quite brown in the middle. Number 3, that's the intriguing one for me, and that's the one I'm going to be looking at when I do the compression test in a minute, because it's the only one that hasn't got any grit around it, and it's the only one that's wet on the threads. doesn't smell wet like petrol, but also, interestingly enough, it doesn't smell like coolant. Now, there's a little dribble of it that's left on here, and to tell you the truth, I don't know what it is. It's very strange. It's almost sticky, like oil, but what it's doing on the threads of the plug, I don't know. So I mean, I'm expecting number 3 to be the one with the least compression, because I suspect that's the one where the head gasket has gone, and I think the coolant is getting in there. But that's got a black tip on it, a black crown, and it's not as brown as the other ones in the middle, to tell you the truth. Now we got number 4, which is the one I thought was leaking originally. I think number 4 is the one that does misfire though, so it's quite strange. Although at the moment I've got a really bad misfire where as soon as it boosts, all the cylinders just go like a machine gun. But I think number 4 is the one that misfires on startup, and that's been getting worse. But that's got a load of grit all the way around the threads, and it's very black, very sooty. So I will be cleaning those up. I'm going to clean those up. Then I'm going to put them back in the holes. I'm going to get the air gun and blow all the dirt out from inside, and then I'm going to do the compression test. Remember what I said. I think number 3, one with this wet plug, I reckon that's going to be the one with the low compression, because I think that's the one where the head gasket's gone. But you know, we'll have a look. Right, so I've got the rather cheap looking, well it's not cheap looking, it is a cheap compression tester that I bought from eBay around about 10 years ago, and this is what I'm using. I don't know whether I trust it, especially after seeing the results that we're going to see in a minute. Blimey, I don't think I trust it. Anyway, here you can see me fumbling around trying to find a place to put it. I wanted to find a nice place to put it so I could put the camera on it, plus so that I could see it myself. And yes, as soon as I managed to find a place for it to put, I walked off and it fell off. It's important to remember, by the way, that when you're doing a compression test, to have the throttle wide open as far as it will go, so you're getting as much air in as possible. Well, it's no wonder it runs at all with results like that. I don't trust this gauge because I don't think that it would be running as well as it does run with results like this. This is far too low compression. I'm surprised it even manages to start. Also, I thought I'd check the oil underneath the oil filter cap, because some of you may be wondering. I mean, I know there wasn't any mixture there, but if the head gasket had gone and the oil was mixing with the water, there would be like a creamy substance underneath there, but that's none there, none whatsoever. So just for your own reference, in case you're thinking to yourself, well, if the head gasket's gone, that will always be there. That's not true. Sometimes the head gasket can go on a waterway or an oilway, but not mix. So when people look under the oil cap and say, well, the oil's not gone creamy, so therefore the head gasket hasn't gone. That may not be true, and it could be the other way around. If there is cream, it doesn't necessarily mean the head gasket's gone. There could be condensation. That can usually be caused if you're just driving around town in the winter. You get condensation build up underneath the rocker cover. So, you know, the creamy oil under the oil cap is a common myth, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the head gasket has gone. It could be absolutely fine. Go. You'll have to excuse that buzzing. I'm currently charging up a battery for a Fiesta at the moment. I'm trying to get that to revive. I've been reviving a lot of batteries and I'm trying to revive this one. Anyway, so I'm not sure on the first, on cylinder 1. I'll have to check the video footage, but you'd have already seen that because I'm going to put that up on the screen as and when I'm doing it, so you'd have seen what it was, but I think it was around about 65 psi. 2 was 75, 3 I was calling 76, and 4 was around about 40, I'm going to call that. Now, to tell you the truth, I don't know whether I believe that compression tester, that gauge. It was around a relatively cheap one. I've had it around about 10 years, and it was quite cheap when I bought it. So I don't know whether I trust that, but it gives us a rough idea, and I think all of those are pretty low. I haven't looked up the spec yet, but I probably will have done by the time you know, I put this video together. So I'll put the spec up in this video somewhere and we can see exactly what they're supposed to be. So, you know, I think there's definitely a problem, but cylinder 3 was the one I thought was going to be the issue. I thought that was going to be the least. Turned out to be the most. Well, if we trust that gauge anyway. So I'm still pretty sure, even though with the turboed engine you usually have a bit less compression, you know, to compensate, because if you have high compression you end up with detonation and pre-detonation and all that kind of rubbish. But I still think 70s is a bit low. I think we should have been up in the 90s somewhere, and 40s definitely way too low. That's ridiculous. However, you may well have noticed, as I would have said, that start, that was a completely cold start. Bearing in mind there was a bit of oil in them in the cylinders as well, because you probably didn't see, you probably saw one, I don't know, but I'd put oil in every single one of them after, and I'd done a dry compression test and a wet compression test. So there wasn't too much smoke, and it started up relatively well. I had a little bit of a cough, as you would have seen, but it started up better. I mean, this week I've been driving it every evening this week. Because the Land Rover is still waiting to have its clutch put in, you see. So I've been driving the Focus every evening this week, and every single startup has been worse and worse and worse until yesterday. It developed that misfire when I was driving. The minute it hit on boost, it's going. You know, the one where it just sounds like it doesn't cough and splutter. It just goes like that. You know, and there's no power there. You know, that's when I thought, well, I'm going to do something. So I had another look at it. I was expecting all the plugs to be cracked, all the insulator, all that. I don't know what they make it out of these days. The white, it used to be ceramic, probably still is ceramic. I don't know. All that insulator. That's usually the other times it's happened. That's all been cracked and it's all fallen off. But that wasn't happening this time. There's no cracks in them whatsoever. And I think maybe it started up a bit better. I had a little bit of a cough and splutter, then it burst into life. I think it's because I cleaned the plugs, but we'll see how it goes. Either way, something's got to be done about it. So if I do have to take the head off and do the gasket, as I'm suspecting, it'll be being probably ported and polished and everything as well. Might as well while it's off, eh? But we'll see. It was an interesting in look anyway, to see what's going on inside that bloody engine.